Becky to the No Rest for the Weary podcast. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you are a social media marketer and international speaker. Love it. That is like really cool, isn't it though? And you specialise in content strategy and organic growth. Would you love to? I feel like that's so professional. When I do this, Becky, it's just me trying to, like, I just want to have a chin wag, and you have to do this like proper bit at the beginning. So I've done that proper bit. Would you like to introduce yourself in a less formal way?
Yes, of course, of course. Do you know what I hate? Because obviously I've written my bio for things like this, but when someone reads it out, I'm like, oh, who's she talking about? She's
Love it.
I am a social media marketer, and I do specialize in content strategy and organic growth on social media generally, but my main love is Instagram. So I do go across the platforms in terms of people I work with, but Instagram is like my bread and butter. And yeah, like I said, I am an international speaker as well because I speak on various different summits. I've got a membership called Boss Your Socials Club with members all over the world, which is amazing. And yeah, I've been doing that for about just over 5 years now, and it's sort of grown into what you were just talking about, actually, because it started with doing done for you social media management for people, where I literally did people's social media for them, and in the last year and a half or so I've grown it into more of the things that I love, so, and helping more of the people that I love. So now I help small business owners. I work exclusively with women, and I help small business owners who either don't have the budget or don't particularly want to outsource, and who don't have like the teams or, like I said, the budget to implement most of the advice that's given to them. I think there's a lot of, I won't swear on here, but there is a lot of BS out there
You can
about,
swear if you want.
okay, well, there's a lot of bullshit out there about how to do social media marketing, and it really winds me up because, you know, it comes from people who just do their own account and they've had one thing work for them and they're trying to claim that's how you should then do social media, or it's coming from people that are telling the people that I work with and the people that I'm passionate about helping, like I said, the people sort of working generally on their own, but if not with maybe one other person, and maybe has a virtual assistant or something like that, and it just makes it really overwhelming for people, and I think it turns people away from social media marketing. It makes them think it's too hard to do, and it's not. Like, if you approach it in the way that I sort of teach and the way that I try and help people, it can take away the overwhelm, and maybe you won't get those like insta-worthy results, you know, like how I grew by 100,000 followers in a month, because that didn't really happen, unless you plummeted loads of money into ads. But it's helping people basically be able to get themselves out there, be confident to show up on social media and help it work for them. So now I don't do so much of the done for you stuff, although I do a little bit of that, but I do some one-to-one consultancy stuff, and I've got my membership, Boss Your Socials Club, where I help women with their content strategy and get them to do all that stuff, and I absolutely love it.
Oh, how did you get into this? What's the business love story? Where did it all begin?
Oh, I feel like this could send me right down a rabbit hole. I'll try and keep it concise.
Oh, I love a
Basically,
story.
Well, basically, it came from, I'd spent my whole sort of career working in higher education. I worked for the student union side of it, and it was a small charity. It wasn't in the bar, which, when I say I worked in a student union, most people think it is.
Yeah.
But I did. I managed the advice service, and my most recent job, I managed the advice service, and I helped elected officers to run campaigns and create change, and get students having a say in their education. So I always did stuff like that. And then the very, very shortened version of it is I had my children. So I'm a mum to, well, and now 10-year-old and 8-year-old. But I had my children, and I was in a very outwardly successful job. I had a very outwardly successful life. You know, like, I had a lovely family, I had a nice home, I had a senior job that paid me well. But I was completely and utterly miserable because I just had no time. I'd never, you know, this is no I've written blogs about this and all this. It's no shade on what people decide to do. It just wasn't right for me. I didn't have my kids to drop them at nursery. They were the first ones being dropped off at 7 o'clock in the morning, and they were the last ones to be picked up at 6 o'clock at night. And I was just really unhappy. We also had, which again I won't go into now because it will be here forever, but my husband faced quite a lot of mental health struggles, and basically I just hit a point where I was like, what is this life like? I'm just literally surviving, trying to get through the sort of like struggle of motherhood, and the fantasy of having it all, and people were telling me that I had it all because I had, I was really well paid, I had all this stuff, but like I didn't want it. So I was so unhappy. So basically, long story short, I ended up leaving that job without another job to go to. It wasn't really impulsive. Lots of stuff happened. I went off sick for a little while because I sort of buckled under the pressure of a lot of it. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And that is not who I am as a person. Like if I haven't got the next thing planned, I've never really been that kind of person to go into the unknown. And it was actually my husband who said to me, just like at the time, my children were 4 and 2, maybe just under 2. And he was like, look, just take some time to have the maternity that you never really had. Take some time. I say just be their mum. It's never just being a mum, is it? Because it's the biggest in the world. But just be their mum and suss out what you want to do. And so I did that. I did that for a little bit. And we were very lucky. We had a very small amount of savings, but they did not last very long. So it got to a point where I was like, well, I'm going to have to do something because like we need some money. And I'd looked at different jobs to go into. I knew I didn't want to go back into the pressure of what I'd had before, not straight away. I thought I'd go into that eventually again because I did love it. And I'd looked at all these different jobs, and basically my friend had put out something on social media. She ran her own business. I'd actually met her on maternity leave of my second, and she had spent a long time before I walked out my job saying to me, she'd walked out of her job as well, basically. She was a teacher. She went back and then left and was like, no, I can't do this. And she spent a long time saying to me, Becky, you don't need to be this miserable. Like, it doesn't need to be this hard. Like, there are other options. Anyway, she started her own business and she'd had it going for about 1.5 years. And she put something out on social media just saying, I'd love some help with my business. If anybody's got a few hours a week or whatever. So I just dropped her a message, and this is a shortened version, I promise. But I just dropped her a message and said, what is it that you're like? She had a physical premises for something. I was like, what is it that you're after? And she said, I want someone to come in and clean a couple of times a week because I can't do all the cleaning. Like, I've sort of had enough of that. And I want someone to help me with the admin on my social media. So I was like, right, okay, cool. So, and I had at the time for us to be able to afford it, I'd taken my little boy had just started school, and I took my little girl out of nursery. And the sad thing is that saved us most of the money that we needed to save because I was spending so much in her being in there. So that would top us up a little bit. And so I took her with me cleaning a couple of times a week. She was like 2 years old. And I don't say this with any slight on cleaners or whatever, but I had some moments where I was like, oh my God, what have I done to my life? Like, I've gone from this, like, I'm well educated, I've got this really good degree, I had this really successful career, and now all of a sudden I'm dragging my 2-year-old with me to go and clean a couple of times a week. And it was just, but I look back on that and go, oh, do you know what? You did what you needed to do to get through. But the other side of what she wanted help with was the admin on social media. So, and that was literally just doing admin type bits. She told me what she wanted me to do. But because I'd had my whole career in engagement, campaigning, like all of that different kind of stuff, I started to say to her, we should do this, and actually we should try this, and we should try this. So she was like, you know what, you do what you want because I trust you with it. We were really good friends. She was like, I trust you with it, like, crack on, do what you want. And after about 6 weeks, she started to have some other local businesses say to her, what's happened with your social media? Like, your social media is amazing. And so she'd say, oh, my friend's working with me. And she came to me and said, and this was all like, I mean, it was a proper business because obviously I'd done, set myself up on HMRC and whatever, but I was sort of viewing it as I was doing it from like the sofa with my little girl, like on my lap watching CBeebies or whatever. And she said, do you mind if I give your details out to these people? And I was like, okay. I don't really know. So anyway, so by the Christmas, that was in the October that I'd started, by the Christmas, I had 5 clients doing social media management for them, but I hadn't set up like any of the processes, any of the systems, that you're meant to set up. The following March, we went into the first lockdown. So like literally 6 months later. And I kept her as a client and one of my other clients. So I went right back down to the basics, but it was right stripped down. Yeah, so for a little while longer, I did social media management, but I started to join some community. I started to take my business seriously, basically. And it's like, right, I've got a bit of headspace. I was homeschooling my little boy, but I had a little bit more headspace to go, right, I'm going to do some actual training and suss out what I'm meant to be doing. And that led to me making various connections. As you'll well know from being in different communities, it's the best thing to meet people. And people started to ask me, I think because of the approach I take to social media, where it isn't the standard, I try to never say you should do this or you should do that. I like to ask questions around what their business is, how much time they have, whether they have children at home. Because what I can do now that my children are 10 and 8 is completely different to what I could do when I
Mm.
on my lap on the sofa. And because of that, people started to invite me to talk in different things. And I loved it. And it was obviously having 5 clients was amazing and I could earn decent money off it. But I'd almost created the job that I'd previously hated, where
Mm.
it was taking all of my time and all of that kind of stuff. And so I wanted to reduce the hours. I wanted to actually work school hours. And it was probably, so if it was about a year and a half ago, I started the membership. Prior to that, I'd been doing a regular monthly content hour in somebody's membership where people would just come and ask me questions basically, and I'd give them advice on it. So I was about 2 years in when I started that. And then about a year after doing that, I was like, this is what I love. How can I make that? And I think that's a brilliant thing about having a business, isn't it? You can just change what you're doing. And it's like, right, how do I make that? How do I make that sustainable? How can I do more of that? And also with social media management, I quickly realized that I love the people that I worked with, but they were people that had they had very successful businesses. They could afford to outsource. Most of the people that came to these content hours were the people that I got real joy from helping, because it was helping somebody who had been where I was a few years earlier, had no idea what they were doing. But I was like, right, how can I make that sustainable? And basically I was challenged by my business coach at the time. I was on this coaching call and I was moaning that all of the advice out there, it's just noise and it's BS. And I wish people knew, more of this stuff. And the challenge wasn't around the membership, but she said, okay, well, go and create your own framework. And I was like, what do you mean? I just wanted to have a moan about it. And then she's like, go and create your own framework. So I did. And she was like, and I want you to do a free masterclass on it. And that's, you can grow your email list and that kind of stuff. You can come up with this framework and you can do it as a free masterclass. So I went away and did it. And I came up with the Boss framework. As I was doing it, I was like, do you know what? I did the masterclass and I was like, if people just had this, and if people just had this, it would make it so much easier. And I think about things for a long time without realizing, and then suddenly things seem to happen very quickly. So I was on co-working at the time with a group of my friends, and I was like, I've got an idea for a membership, but I don't know if it will work. So I explained what I thought was going to be in there. And they were like, yeah, like I'd sign up for that tomorrow. Like that would be absolutely amazing. So I sent an email to my email list and was like, I've got this idea. Don't know if it's any good, but here's what I'm thinking. I'm going to offer it. It's always going to be at an affordable price because I want to help the people that can't afford it. But I'm going to offer it at a real low price to start with, just to see if it's got legs. And basically I sent that email, went and cooked dinner, came back to shut my laptop down, and I had about 15 emails in my inbox going, yeah, I'd love that. Yeah, I want to sign up. By midnight that night, I was like, right, I need to do, because I can also overthink things a lot. I was like, right, I need to do this or not do it. By midnight that night, I'd set up a checkout and a Facebook group for it. It was a lot of people that I knew really well, because I'd built the community in my email. So I kind of knew the people coming in. And I just went with it. And I kept the doors open for like a month, and said, right, like from the end of this month, I'm going to shut the doors again because I want to get it right. And I'd sort of said, if I could get 10 people in there, I'd be all right with that because I can test it out. And by the end of that month, I'd got 33 people had
Oh,
signed up.
amazing.
And I was just like, oh my God. So we closed the doors. I wanted it to be open door because I wanted it to be accessible when people needed it. I don't like a lot of that FOMO marketing. But I wanted to close the doors so that I could get it right. So I basically closed the doors for 3 months, did a bit of a beta version of it, and then opened the doors in September. And it's been going ever since. And we've got just under 50 members in there. And in June this year, I was able to stop completely doing done for you work. I am earning less than I was when I was doing done for you, but I was all right with that because I'm also working now 4 days a week, school hours. And I do some one-to-one content strategy stuff, but not the done for you stuff. And I just feel so, I don't like the word lucky, but I feel so incredibly blessed that from what started from quite a hopeless, like, oh my God, this is too hard, I can't do any of it, I'm walking out of my 13-year career. Right, I need to do this just to make a little bit of money, like a couple of £100 a month, just so that we can top up the bills, has grown into this business I absolutely love. And I joke about the international speaker thing, but I'm literally speaking to people all over the world, and I'm asked to go on podcasts, you know, like I was on an American podcast every week. I'm like, oh my God, I like, this is unreal. So yeah, sorry, that was definitely the shortened version, but was a bit of a long story as well.
No, this is the opportunity for you to share stories. I'm sure that part of strategy is about sharing your
Yeah,
stories,
yeah,
on
yeah.
social media. So I loved it. I'm just sitting here like I love being told a story. Absolutely love it. Do you feel like some of those moments where, and also like just going back to the intention of this whole podcast? I mean, we are. I think this is going to be like episode 280 something, but sharing stories of facing the fear and doing it anyway. And a lot of that comes into listening to your instincts. Do you feel that your instincts have played quite a big part in how that story has unfolded for you?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's interesting because the feel the fear and do it anyway. I'm not convinced I know at the time that I'm feeling the fear and doing it anyway. I'm just acting on an instinct. That's probably a really good way
Mm.
to describe it. But when I look back, because I remember people saying to me, that's so brave, like walking out of your job. I didn't feel brave. I felt like I'd never failed more in all my life because
Mm.
I hadn't done this whole narrative around having it all. And I, you know, had friends that were really successful, but like and at the time I was like, oh my God, I've failed. But I've done a lot of work on reframing what having it all actually means to me, what success means to me, all of that kind of stuff. But I definitely think it's around the instincts. And I think one of the big things for me, so I mentioned my husband's mental health struggles earlier. So back in 2018, he tried to take his life. And that was kind of the
Oh
start of,
wow.
I left my job about 15 months later. And it was about 6, 7 months after he tried to take his life that he started to get better and I could breathe again, and I just completely broke. And that was sort of my breaking point at work. But I look back at that and think, I feel like if I'd felt the fear and done it anyway, I should have left that job 2 years earlier before I hit a breaking point. Regardless of my husband's mental health struggles, I wasn't happy in that job. And I think one of the things I really, really learned from that was partly it was awful when what we went through. It was really awful. And,
Mm.
you know, again, that's a whole different conversation. But it wasn't the worst possible outcome. Like, he's still here. He's really well now. He's doing really well. But what that taught me was, if that night that he tried to take his life had gone differently, my life would have been irreparably changed forever. And I'm you know, you do come back from things, don't you? Because you just have to. But I look back and think, at that point, I was like, do you know what? None of this is important. And I think that was the first seed in my brain of like, why are you struggling? Why are you in a job that you're miserable in? Because literally your life could change like overnight. And obviously that's a really dramatic thing to change
No, but
it.
it's true.
It is. And I was just like, you're just, you know, you're not enjoying the children. Like, and I know it's really cliche, and I'm the first one to say my kids can be absolute dicks as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But like, I wasn't enjoying. I'm not that person that's like cherish every moment. But I wasn't enjoying any of it because I was just struggling. And I think I just looked at it and was like, do you know what? And I was very privileged to have a little bit of savings to be able to walk out. But the fact was, I did have that, so I had a choice. And I'd gone to therapy at the point that I broke and went off sick from work. When he'd started to get better, I went to therapy, and I remember saying to her, really vividly remember saying to her, I'm miserable and I'm trapped. And she was like, what do you mean you're trapped? And I said, I'm surrounded by misery because my husband is suicidal, like he still was at that point. My kids moan all the way to nursery and all the way back because I'm dragging them out of bed, and I'm like I'm literally seeing them for about an hour a day. And she was like, but why are you trapped? And I said, because I haven't got the money to just do whatever. And so basically, without going into all of that, she said to me, right, what I want you to do is go away and write down every single option you've got, whether you think it's feasible or not, every single option you've got. So one of those options is to walk out of your job. One of those, and so do that. And she said, then what I want you to do is look at that list and cross off the ones that aren't feasible. So walking out of your job isn't feasible right now because you need a bit of savings or whatever, but write down these different options. Anyway, so I went away and did that, and it was so liberating because I was like, oh, I do have a choice. I just don't like the choices that are in front of me. And I didn't want to leave my job because I loved my job. I'd worked really hard to get to where I'd got to. I was on good money. But it came to, was it worth it, basically, and going back to all of that. So I think I've always been quite good with instincts, but in those terms, it sort of amplified that. And another thing I did on a sort of smaller scale when I started my business was I did an activity where I got really, really clear on what my personal values and they're pretty interlinked. They're the personal values and business values were. And now what I do, I always say to myself, nothing's happened, nothing's that bad, because it's not life and death. If it's not life and death, it's not that bad. And I got really clear on my values. So now when I'm trying to make a decision, go, right, is it life or death? Like, am I going to leave us with no food on the table? So, for example, stopping the done for you work, I probably earn about a third of what I was earning this time last year. On Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever, I was probably more successful last year. I don't think I've ever been more successful than I am right now because I'm working less hours. I'm earning a decent amount to be able to have a nice life, take the kids out every now and then. So I always kind of come back to that, and I come back to my values and go, is this, and I also come back to, is this making you happy more than it's making you sad? Because obviously nothing makes you happy all the time. And if it's not, I pick things up way sooner, because what I never ever want to happen again is me get to the point that I break before I make a decision. And I think that's what I did in my job. I tried for too long to make it work. And I've reframed having it all. I've reframed success. And now I'm just not, I am afraid to make decisions because they are scary, but I make them because I just think, what's the worst that can happen? And someone said to me, I said life or death, and this is very me specific, because I know lots of people, what I'm about to say, would absolutely love that to happen. So I'm not saying it really dismissively, but someone said to me, what's the two worst things that could happen to you right now? And I was like, that I die or I get pregnant again. Like, they're the two worst things that could happen in my personal life right now. And so now, before I make any decision, I go, right, am I going to die or am I going to get pregnant again by doing this thing? If I'm not, I'll give it a go and see what happens, because if it doesn't work out, I've just learned something from it. So I think it's instincts, but it's also trying to get braver, that if you don't try, or if you don't give something a go, you're never going to know.
Would you reflect that same tip into social media strategy?
Do you know
Because I
what?
feel like some people just get so scared and paralyzed by social media that they just don't do anything.
Yeah.
I can't believe I've just gone from you saying about that into social media strategy, but
No, not at all. Not at all, because I 100%, and I think that's why it's so important, because actually when you look at the world and you look at things that can happen, there are life-changing, awful things that can happen.
Yeah.
Social media is not one of them. So it's
No.
just,
Yeah.
what's the worst that can happen? And actually, I just said it was my business coach who, at the time, who said to me, what are the two worst things that can happen to you right now? And that was because I was starting out. So for the first year and a half I had my business, I didn't have my own social media page. And I say that as a social media marketer that now teaches all of that kind of stuff. And I had
Mm.
all of the excuses in the world. Like, I had my children at home. I had 2 young children. I had this, that, and the other. I haven't got the time. I'm already managing like 5 other accounts. I don't want to create content for another account. But basically, when we dug down into it, like, I was just scared of failing. And I was scared that if I had a social media account out there, I had something that could fail. So I set up this social media account and I started posting some content because I was like, right. And I also realized I don't think I've ever been scared of failing. I'm scared of what other people say about me failing. And
Mm.
as soon as I realized that, I was like, oh my God, are you really going to let that stop you? Like, just do like, so I did the social media account, but I still played quite small in it. And I was on this call with my business coach and she was talking about going live and I was like, oh no. And this is like, I am a social media marketer, so I get it. It's easy to say it to someone else. But she was like, what's the worst that's going to happen if you go live? Are you going to get pregnant or are you going to die? And I was like, well, no, let's hope not. It would be quite a spectacular live. But I wrote down a list of what's the worst that can happen. The tech will fail. No one shows up to it. I stumble over what I'm going to say. I forget what I'm going to say. All of those things. So then it was like, right, okay, if any of those things happen, what are you going to do about it? Well, if the tech fails, you just go back on and you try and reconnect. If you forget what you're going to say, like in a normal conversation, you pick up on something else, it will flow. If no one shows up, just carry on talking because no one watching the replay doesn't know that no one's shown up. So
Exactly.
anyway,
Yeah.
she challenged me to go live and I did. And I'm not just making this up. Every single thing that could have gone wrong went wrong. The tech did
Yeah. I
fail.
bet.
People joined it and then I crashed off of it. Like it was all, but by the end of it, I was laughing because I was just like, oh my God, I've literally gone through all the worst things that can happen and they've all happened, but I didn't get pregnant or die. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
from I've still got that live on my account. It's so cringy, like, because I'm sort of looking down at notes and I'm doing whatever. Whereas now I go like, well, I don't do, I used to go live like once a week and I show up onto my stories. I, come on podcasts and things like that and just chat and laugh and joke and whatever. But if I hadn't just started, I'd never have got better at that. And I think the same with any kind of social stuff, like Instagram, especially. Stories only last for 24 hours. So what's the worst that's going to happen? At the worst comes to worst, you can delete a post if you really want to. Like nothing that bad is going to happen from trying stuff on social media and giving it a go. Some of your fears will happen, like the tech failing or, and you might get negative comments. But I think a lot of what I've spoken about so far was me working on my mindset. And that's the biggest thing. And in my boss framework, it's not revolutionary. Each of the letters stands for something different. But the B stands for boundaries. Because I believe that boundaries should be front and center. And I got challenged on that actually by my business coach, who said, no, it should be like you should start off with something marketing. I was like, no, but I don't want to. Because I think if you get your boundaries right and you get your mindset right, anything else you can learn and you can try and you can do. But a lot of me showing up and trying that was me working on mindset and trying to let go of what other people thought. So yeah, it 100% relates. And I think, you said, oh, we've literally gone from like you talking about that into social media. But I think that's really true because it's like, nothing's that bad. Like that was awful and that was horrific. That was some of the darkest times of my life. That's nothing's that bad. Like it's just so yeah, I think it's just
Yeah.
it's feeling the fear and doing it anyway, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
what's the worst that's going to happen?
I always find that like my niche is definitely business owners with a warrior spirit because my story, which will when I come on your podcast you get to hear all about me, but that warrior spirit where you've gone through such hard times means that we get to do this. So there's no moaning from me about Instagram that is free. Like there's no moaning like, oh God, I've got to do the work that I've made for myself because I've designed everything inside of my business because I am the boss. My son was really poorly last week and I had to just literally ditch everything to be a mum. And I'm like, well, the universe is telling me I'm just mum today and I'm going to embrace that because I get to. I didn't have to call anyone and go, oh, by the way, we've gone to Pukesfield today. You know, like we get to do all of these things, but I am so like, when you've been in a position where you basically you haven't got much, or you're in such extreme pain that it does feel a little bit like you might die in that kind of thing, you know,
Yeah.
then nothing really, it don't really matter. Like, everything that we have, as long as you've got food, warmth, shelter, you've got everything you need. Everything else is a want to have, a nice to have. Oh my God, look, let's all be grateful. And I love that energy. I'd rather be with that warrior spirit. Okay, you've knocked me down, I'm going to get back up again energy, than
Yeah.
being taking it all too serious. That's why I just talk loads of shit all the time. I like just chat shit and people love it.
And you're right. And you know what? The thing about, like, so to putting that into social media is like, you know, chat shit and people will love it. Some people won't. And that's not about
No.
you or them. It's that you're not right for each other. And so I was
Yeah.
talking about values earlier, and I'm really strong on them now. So I'm just like, well, do you know what? If you unfollow me because you don't like how I am, that's fine, because you were never going to buy from me anyway. And ultimately, we are businesses. But also, it's like, well, if you did sign up for Bossy Socials Club and you don't like how I show up on Instagram, you're not going to like Bossy Socials Club, because that's how I
No.
am in there. So that's and
Yeah.
that's not about me. It's not about you. We are just not right for each other, and that's why, you know, you could argue that social media, you know, other areas of business, working with business owners, is a saturated area. Well, no, because everybody's got their own unique energy and vibe,
Mm.
that kind of thing. And I think you're right. Like, it just comes from, like, I talk as well to people when, if people moan at me a lot about Instagram, I'm like, don't do it. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah,
Don't do
just
it.
leave it.
If you hate it that much, don't do it, but find another thing that works for you. So work on your SEO, or, you know, launch a podcast, or go onto LinkedIn or whatever. If you hate it that much, don't do it. What I try and teach is, tell me what you hate about it, and I will help you find, you know, like features on Instagram, or ways to make that easier, or tips to make that easier, to not necessarily love it, but hate it a little bit less. Because ultimately, it's not free, because we have to put our time into creating stuff,
Yeah,
and we
yeah,
should
yeah.
like time. But ultimately, we don't have to outlay any money for it, and there's so many opportunities in there if you embrace it. But if you hate it that much, just don't do it. Because,
Yeah.
and then as soon as I say that, sometimes people are like, well, I have to. You don't have to. You don't have to do anything. And I talk as well a lot about, like, I didn't, like, owning a business is not easy, is it?
No.
And I didn't do that to become my own worst boss. So it's just, you know, like, if I said earlier about, like, I spot red flags sooner now, like if things are making me miserable or I'm unhappy, and then I have to look at it and go, well, why is that? Because you are in complete control. Like, it's literally your business. So if you don't like it, either suck it up and stop moaning about it because you're choosing to do it, or change it.
Yeah.
What you said, that is so true about if me and my family and the people that I love are fed and watered, we've got shelter, we're warm, you know, all that kind of stuff. We're incredibly privileged, and there's all that stuff out there about how to earn six figures, how to earn 5k, 10k, 15k months, whatever. I'm just not interested in that, because I know, and I might be somewhere down the line when my kids grow up, I know I could do that, but I'm not willing to sacrifice the time. Like, I've been there and I've done that with sacrificing the time. And at the age and the stage that my kids are at and that I'm at, I'm not willing to do that. So, but that doesn't make me not successful. That's what I had to do a lot of work on. It's
Mm.
like, I'm incredibly successful. I get to, you know, I had somebody that I was interviewing for a podcast last week, and she messaged me saying, my daughter's going on a school trip on Thursday. They've literally told me on, like, I think it might have even been the day before. She was like, I feel really awful, but is there any way we can reschedule? I was like, absolutely. Because if we can't do that, then what's the point? Like, if that's what
Yeah.
makes you happy and that's what your success is, that's what my success is, being able to volunteer to help out on my son's swimming lessons once a week at school. It's like, yeah, you define your own success, don't you? And no one can tell
Yeah.
you that because you're not earning six figures, you're not a good enough business.
Yeah, and I think that there's that and this is why I don't like money marketing, where you go earn this amount of, Absolutely. Because it's like, well, where's the framework then? Because I want people to buy from me because they feel like my energy is going to change their lives. They don't need to know how much money I earn because
Yeah,
it doesn't, like some of my clients earn more than me. So that don't make no difference, does it? It's about energy and about making how you make people feel. And
exactly.
that's one thing. And I've forgotten the other thing. Bugger, what was you saying? Oh, that's it. This is how I do it if I forget something. But I really I really buck against that thing about having all your shit together. Like when I see a meme that says, "Don't worry, everybody hasn't got their shit together," I go, "No, actually, I have." It's because I've defined what having my shit together means for
Yeah,
me. Like
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not going
yeah.
to judge what your definition is or what somebody else's definition. What counts for me is my definition of having all my shit together, and I don't give a shit about turning up at the school like with a full face and make. I'm not going to do that most of the time unless I'm ready for work. I choose to have makeup on for work. Don't matter. I've got jogging bottoms on under here, dressed down underneath
I
and
also
dressed
have
up on the
jogging
top. So it's like I've got my shit together, and I love that. But I define it, and if I drop a ball, what's the worst that's going to happen?
exactly. And I think that's such an important question to go, what's the worst that can
Yeah.
happen? Because if it's not that bad, just crack on. And do you know what? I woke up, I did the school run this morning. I was laughing as you said that. Like literally, I don't even think I'd washed my face before I left the house, which sounds disgusting. The school is just across the road. But I was running late. My husband's working away. I was running late. I'd just about managed to get the kids well dressed and presented and whatever. I had a banging headache. So I literally scrunched my hair up, whacked some joggers and a jumper on and took them across to school. And obviously I had this. So I was then going to go and have a shower and sort myself out and look presentable if I want to. But because if I turned up how I looked this morning, honestly, you would have been a bit like, oh my God, who is this woman? It's,
I would have welcomed you still. This would have been fine.
so, but I sorted myself out and I thought, oh, don't put jeans on. I don't have to put jeans on. I can just
No.
put a nice top on and I'm still in my joggers and my slippers. And
Oh,
it
jeans are the worst thing ever, even though you have to wear them, don't you? But oh God, bloody hate jeans.
but you
Oh,
don't have to wear them if they can only see your top half.
exactly.
So,
Exactly.
but it is just that, isn't it? And I think everything is about defining it for you. And the same with like going into social media, the same as social media. Like I share quite a lot on social media. I've shared, I've openly said on here about my husband. I have shared stuff on social media. I get it was a big part of my healing journey to write a lot about it. It was about 2 years after it happened that I ended up sharing it and got such a lovely response to it in terms of it helping people, and just saying, I'm so glad that you've done this. But that doesn't mean, in terms of like what you share on social media and being authentic and all that kind of stuff, it's about defining like what you're comfortable with. So I've tried to stop myself. I used to say I overshare, and I am a big oversharer, but I've tried to stop saying that because I don't
Mm,
overshare. I share what I'm comfortable with. And what I'm comfortable with, what you're comfortable with, what someone else is comfortable with is completely different. It doesn't make me right or wrong for sharing the stuff about my husband, for example. It doesn't make someone else who could have gone for exactly the same thing right or wrong for not sharing it. But it's
mm,
about, again, knowing your values, knowing your business, knowing your audience. So the question I always advise people to ask themselves before they post anything on social media is, why does it matter and who cares? And if you can answer those two questions, it's worth sharing. If you can't, because often people, it would be, why does it matter and who cares? Why does it matter? Well, I haven't posted in a week. Who cares? Well, literally only you, because has anybody else noticed that you haven't posted in a week? Then you shouldn't post it. But if you can answer that, then share it. You can't really go far wrong with it. And for me, with the personal side, I'm really big on normalizing like the highs and lows and the struggles and all that kind of stuff. Not that I share everything. There's an awful lot that I go through that I don't share because, like, for example, I've had some stuff going on with my little girl at the moment. I've not shared any of that on social media, and I wouldn't go into detail about it here because I'm protecting her and that's
yeah, of
her
course.
story, my story, etc. So it doesn't mean I go on social media and share absolutely everything, but I have to find what I'm comfortable with sharing. I ask myself why it matters and who cares. So, for example, some people will say, don't share personal stuff on social media. No one cares about you. Um, I completely disagree with that.
Yeah.
If you can answer that question, using my husband as an example, just because it's quite a good one, or with his mental health stuff, it's like, well, why does it matter? Well, do you know what? Loads of people are struggling with that and are in the depths of it. And I remember when we were in the depths of it, I remember sitting on the bathroom floor and sobbing because I'd read a tweet from somebody who told me that he was 500 days post his suicide attempt and he's never felt better. And I literally sat on the bathroom floor and sobbed because I couldn't see how we were ever going to get to 500 days past that point where he didn't feel suicidal. And now I look back at that and think, actually, that kept me going because it gave me hope that there was like the other side of the story. So in terms of why does it matter, I want to give people that same hope. Who cares? Well, I care because I care about helping people. They care if it helps them. So, you know, in terms of that, should you or shouldn't you share personal stuff? Should you or shouldn't you share this, that, or political things, for example? That's the question I go to. And that answer will be unique to you and your business and your values. And as long as you can answer that, then share it. And what's the worst that's going to happen? Someone doesn't like it. And I have had people not directly tell me to my face, but I have had people say, like they're not comfortable with what I share and they have unfollowed me, and that's okay because that doesn't mean I'm wrong for sharing it, and it doesn't mean it's wrong. It might be triggering something for them that they don't want to see. It's not wrong for them to not want to see it, but we have to do what's right for us.
And I think it's where people, I find that people struggle with it because it's not about the judgment that they receive. It's about standing up for what they have set in stone and the discomfort you feel when you've got to stand up for what you believe in and how you are. And that's where, like, I am very comfortable in saying, this is who I am. This is how I run my business. This is what I stand for. This is what I'm going to talk about. If you don't like it, that is fine. Like, you're not a bad person, nor am I. I'm going to stay in my own lane. But it's that people pleasing likability of wanting to be liked by everybody, the discomfort you feel when you realize you can't be liked by everybody and feeling that. Because I think, like, people judge all the time. Like, inside our heads, we judge all of the time. I don't think there's something that as human beings you can absolutely delete out of your brain. But you can definitely reframe quite a lot. You can use, like all of those techniques to rewire that brain so it doesn't impact you and create that toxic energy that you can create for yourself, especially if that's familiar to you, and all of that. You can ditch all of that. But actually just going, I'm going to back myself. I'm going to have my own back. This is who I am. But allowing yourself space to find out what that is. Because a lot of people, and again, I've got so much empathy for what you've gone through, Becci, and, your story of leaving the job and what's happened with your husband. Like, I can feel like I'm so sorry that has happened to you. But having that is just such a crucial part of going, so I don't need to feel like I do have a choice. I'm going to stand by what I believe in. I'm going to move forward, and I don't care if people don't like me. And it's just so powerful and freeing. And I feel like that with my content and how I show up on social media, because I have that, it's so much easier for me to show up. Because I just, like, it's not that I do talk some shit, but a lot of the stuff that I'll have a thought or of something that's a block, or, I'm all about mindset in how I coach anyway. So I'm going to share, like, oh, I've had this thing, I had a reframe, that this is what happened. People are going to go, like, I met with somebody who wants to work with me yesterday, and she was like, when I found you, you were saying everything that goes on in my brain, and everything that you say just fits with what I want to see. I've been looking and there's just nobody like you. And I was like, well, if I hadn't just gone, so she wouldn't have found me. I wouldn't be helping her. Do you know, she made 92% more last month than she did the year before.
That's amazing.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
And she
And
works around the school hours. It's like,
exactly. And that's like 100% what it's all about. Is like, if you don't put yourself out there, people won't know what you've got to offer, and you've got to embrace rejection.
yeah.
So I don't know, do you know Liz Mosley? So I saw a talk from
I
her.
recognise that name, but I don't know who it is.
So go check her out on Instagram. Oh, any of the platforms. She's brilliant. But I went to a talk by her on how she embraced rejection. And I've actually done an Instagram live of her about embracing rejection. And she does branding and brand strategy. And she basically said, if you've got your brand right, people should be unfollowing you. You should be repelling people because you're so clear in who you are, who you want, that you should be rejecting people,
Oh, I love
basically.
that.
Embrace that rejection. And so she set herself a challenge to get 100 rejections and 100 no's. And she said, like, that flip, turning it into a challenge, basically more people said yes, because she came out of her comfort zone and was like, right, I'm just going to ask, because actually I want the rejection, because I want to get to 100 rejections. But it made her more comfortable with getting that rejection. And the no's that you get, or the rejections that you get, is never really about you, because even if it is because someone hasn't liked your energy or vibe, or it hasn't aligned with them, then it means it wasn't the right thing anyway. And I do
Yeah.
think, obviously, I've used some quite extreme examples in this. I'm not saying lots of people wouldn't be comfortable to share what I share, and that's completely fine. And I've done it with complete permission from my husband. I never put stuff out without speaking to him first, because a big part of it's his story. There's also parts of that story that I've never shared, because I have not publicly, not on my social media platforms, because for lots of reasons I don't want to. So it's not about, like, show up and do exactly what you want, because some people have got certain businesses where it probably wouldn't be appropriate, and they need to answer those questions. For mine's not that kind of business, and I'm happy doing it. And I am like, take it or leave it. But lots of people that have joined my membership have joined off the back of saying, I love your energy, I love your vibe, like, I love how real you are about certain stuff. But like I said, if people were watching that and didn't like it, they'd be in for a horrible shock when they came into Bossy Socials Club. Because I think the big thing about being authentic on social media for me isn't about showing up warts and all and sharing absolutely everything. It's about sharing what you're comfortable with. But it's about, if you come into my membership or you meet me in real life, there's no shocks. I'm exactly the same. Like, I will swear if it's an appropriate place to swear. I do swear a lot. I laugh and joke. I find things funny. Like, one of my values is fun. I like to have fun because life's too short not to. And I am a bit silly about certain stuff because I just like that. Whereas if people don't, then that's not for them. And that's what you'll get on my stories as well. So you get to know, and through my posts and stuff, so you'll get to know the person. So it's absolutely about finding what's right for you. And like you said, getting absolutely comfortable with some people not liking that, and knowing that's not about you, it's not about them, you're just not right for each other, and that's okay. Like,
Yeah.
that's fine. And the other thing you said, sorry, was about judging people. I 100% agree that we're humans, and it's human nature to judge
Yeah.
people. I am a huge fan of unfollowing and muting people that trigger negative
Yep.
emotions to me. I mute some of my friends sometimes because it will trigger. Sometimes they'll say stuff and I'll be like, oh, like, about whatever. But then I have to go, that's not about them, that's about me. Like, what's going on in my head right now for me to think, who do you think you are? Because that's normal. Like, if you're feeling rubbish about yourself, or it's the wrong time of the month, or anything like that, mute and unfollow. Like, don't see that, don't put that in front of yourself. So yeah, we all judge, and that's completely fine. I've got much better at being less the difference I see in being judgy and sort of judging is, now I go to myself, okay, what's going on in my head? Because that's not about them, that's about me. And the same way that people having negative responses to anything you put out is about what's going on with them and where they are in their life. It's not about you. And as soon as you get
Yeah.
comfortable with that, like you said, it's just so freeing.
Yeah. Yeah. You're just not wasting energy thinking about it. It's just brilliant. Look how brilliant this time's gone, Becky. Oh my God. I'm just like, literally, I think this is an absolutely gorgeous conversation. I do want to keep you for a little bit longer, if that's okay. Because I just want to, I've got to ask you for the 10-year question, but I would really love to hear your opinion about organic social media, and any of your, like, the biggest tip that you can give about growing your social media organically, because obviously there is so much talk about viral reels. This is like viral anything, and I know a few people that have gone really, really viral, and I don't know whether it has impacted their business in a really good way or not. Like there's a, so I feel like people are judging their social media success against virality, if that's the thing, like viral stuff. And yeah, I would just love to hear about because that's obviously completely organic social media growth, but whether or not it's the most efficient.
So I don't personally think, and I can't say this blanket because obviously it would depend on lots of things, but many businesses should ever really have the goal of wanting to go viral. I think going viral is brilliant for creators and content creators and influencers and that kind of thing because they grow their audience. But ultimately, we are businesses who are trying to sell. Like, yes, we want to grow our audience on social media. Yes, we want a lot of reach. But ultimately, the biggest indicator of success is it driving sales? Is it generating leads? All that kind of stuff. And it's almost my worst nightmare to go viral because it just throws you open to like the internet, brilliant place. It can also be an awful place. But going viral, there's no way to measure who you've got in front of, whether they were your target audience. So if I had a reel that got 3 million views, amazing. But if 2.9, I don't know if it's going to work out numbers, actually, it would still be a high percentage of people that were good. But basically, if 99% of those 3 million weren't my ideal audience, were never going to buy from me, that hasn't benefited my business at all. And in terms of growing on social media and engagement on social media organically and all that kind of stuff, you want an audience of people who are your target audience. So actually growing by 10,000 followers, but 9,999 of them aren't your audience isn't really very helpful. So I think that's the first thing. Going viral is great and it's very exciting, but I think that's a dopamine hit that 99% of the time won't benefit your business. And so in terms of growing organically on social media, I think first it's getting realistic with social media and what you're actually going to like achieve from it. So there are ways to grow quicker and faster by paying for ads. And I don't pay for any ads at the moment. I do hope to get to a position where I can, because it will help me grow faster. But at the moment, everything I do is organic. And my biggest tip for that, so I've just said, like, I don't think most business owners should have the goal of going viral because it just doesn't benefit you in terms of the end results. What I think most business owners' biggest goal, including me, on social media should be is to spend as little time on it as possible, because you've got a million other things to do in your business. So what you need to learn is how you can get your social media strategy right, your engagement right, to do it in as short a time as possible. So this is what I teach a lot of my members. Is that the first thing you need to do is dedicate some time to proactive engagement. So for me, there's two types of engagement. There's reactive engagement, proactive engagement. Reactive is you're reacting to stuff. So if someone sent you a DM or a comment and you've replied to it, basically, it's all that kind of stuff. But proactive engagement is you proactively going out and engaging with other people. And I think a big part of that, people forget this, but a big part of that is that social media was designed to be social. It wasn't designed for businesses to market themselves on. And actually, most of the platforms, if the way they want you to market yourselves is by paying for ads, because obviously that makes them money. So it's about getting clever with what you do with your engagement. So what I say, and there's no one size fits all to this, because I'd ask lots of questions back if somebody was asking me this question, like I said earlier, about, have they got kids? Have they got care responsibilities? What's their business? All that kind of stuff. But is to find an amount of time that is realistic for you each week to dedicate specifically to proactive engagement. So for me, I work Tuesday to Friday. So I do 15 minutes a day, Tuesday to Friday. I batch all of my content. I create it in advance. That's a whole other topic, but that is one of the biggest ways to reduce overwhelm and reduce time that you spend on social media, because your content's going out, but I'm still going on it every day and doing my engagement. So I do 15 minutes a day, Tuesday to Friday. In that time, I will go on my stories. So that's a form of proactive engagement. And I will encourage people to engage with me. So I'll use polls and question boxes, all of that kind of stuff. Because the algorithm, when you break it down really basically, I sort of describe it as a bit of a point system. So, if someone likes your post, that's one point. If they send you a DM, that's another point. If they answer your poll, that's another point. The more points you get over the day, the more you're pushed up the feed. And the more points you get off of one person means you're more likely to be shown to them. So finding ways to get people to interact with you, basically. So whether that's on stories using the features, or in your posts, making sure you use a call to action, encourage people to comment on it. I have people say, no one comments on my posts, and I look at the post and go, well, why would they? Like, you literally haven't asked them a question or said anything that would suggest. So thinking about what you want them to do. So then that 15 minutes a day can be stories. It can also be going out and watching people's stories for a few minutes and responding to their stories. It can be going out and finding new followers. So having, for example, we both target business owner. Target, that sounded a bit yeah. Both our target audience is business owners. We do very different things, but we're probably going to have similar businesses. So I might go and engage and interact with your content because, that puts me in front of your audience, etc. So basically 15 minutes doing that a day. And when I first started doing that, I put a timer on my phone because I would fall down a rabbit hole and I'd end up being on there for 3 hours and I'd suddenly done nothing else, or forgotten why I was even on there in the first place. I don't set the timer anymore, but my biggest tip to do this efficiently is on Instagram. If you save a post, you can save them into collections. So it's like a little Pinterest board, and you can put different folders in there. So I have, in my collection, I have loads of different folders. I have members of Boss Your Socials Club. I have similar, like, for example, it's called proactive engagement, but it's basically businesses with similar target audiences to me. I have a reciprocity folder. So if people engage with my stuff a lot, it's like share the love, basically, and make sure I engage with their stuff back. I have loads of different folders in there. So when I go on in the morning, and my friends say that I have all like a squirrel syndrome because my attention span is so short. So I have to go straight into my collections and be quite targeted with what I'm doing. So if, for example, I want to grow my followers, I'll go and I would go in stories every day for a couple of minutes and post a couple of stories, but then I'll go into those folders and decide what my goal on social media is that day and decide what I want to do from that, basically. And the best thing about that is it stops you being on the feed and falling down a rabbit hole, but also it starts to train the algorithm for what you want to see, because people will say, so I have actually got a folder in there as well of posts, accounts I want to see more of, because the more I engage with them, the more the algorithm is going to show it to me. So it's kind of like training the algorithm. But you'll also be surprised how long 15 minutes is when you're doing it quite intentionally. So I never used to like explaining this tip because made it sound like I was being quite like not manipulative, but like a bit sort of inauthentic with my engagement. But it's not. It's about being intentional with it, and you'll be surprised how much you get done in 15 minutes when you do it like that. So my biggest tip is to think about the folders that you want, because the folders will be different for everybody, and then use that time, even if it's 15 minutes a week, because that's all you've got, that's fine. But use that time to go in there and do it intentionally. Now, the other thing I just want to say as a thing on that is, I said earlier about, those Insta-worthy posts where it's like how I grew by 100,000 followers a month. That's not going to happen if you're engaging. That's not going to happen really if you're doing it all day, every day, without paying for ads and doing other things as well. But you have to be quite realistic with how much you're going to grow. So for me, when I do it Tuesday to Friday, 15 minutes a day, and I do it really consistently, I grow by about 40, 50, maybe 60 followers a month, which if I put a post out there going how to grow by 50 followers a month, I don't think it would take off. But actually, I'm doing 15 minutes a day. That's not very much. I'm not paying for any ads. I'm quite happy with like growing by 50 followers. And I think if we were all honest with ourselves, most people would be. If I want to grow more, I do it for longer, and I might put in an hour a day or something. But generally, to stay consistent, and what is manageable for me is that 15 minutes a day, and I make sure I do that. So it's finding what's right for you, but then also being realistic about how much you're going to grow. And if you're in a launch period, for example, or if you want to grow quicker, you're going to have to do more. So it's seeing whether you've got that time for that. But basically, it's about treating social media for what, and being being really genuine with it. So another thing I do when people follow me is I will send them a message to say thanks so much for the follow, but not that sleazy like thanks so much for the follow and now here's how you can listen to my podcast and download this and do this, that and the other. I am literally starting a conversation. So I won't go into all this now because it's a whole other thing, but I teach, there's a blog on my website about it, about the mindset shift you need for Instagram. And it's about treating Instagram like a real life shop. So for me, that if somebody walked into your real life shop, you wouldn't.
Yeah.
So if someone follows me, I am literally saying hello, like it's and starting a conversation. And it's not 3 DMs later that I slide in with, by the way, did you know I've got Bossy Social stuff?
Wow.
It's literally starting a conversation. And that blog on my website, I've got a podcast episode about it as well, actually. That goes into different ways to treat your Instagram like a real life shop. And it
Yeah.
talks how to do it on stories, all that kind of stuff.
I teach the same thing, but I've never thought about when someone follows you, you should say hello. Because I'm always like, if you had a shop, you wouldn't be you'd be on your stories saying hi, like you go into your shop window, you got to dress
Yeah,
it, and it's got to be stuff for people to buy in the shop. It's got to be there. But I've
yeah,
never done that. I'm going to start doing that. And
yeah.
before I ask you the 10-year question, I love this saved folders idea. So you just save them and then you use the post to remember whose account to go into.
Yeah,
Cool.
basically. So you click save and it will ask if you want to save it to a folder and you can choose your folder you want to save it into.
Brilliant.
And when you go into your collections, for anyone who doesn't know, they're all in there. And so basically I will go in there and if I see Claire at the top of it, I literally tap on your post, go through to your profile and just see if I've missed anything and see what you've been up to. Like sometimes it's just, I think I've got a folder on there as well of just accounts that bring me joy. Like if I'm feeling a
Yeah.
bit like it's just so yeah, I use that as to remind me. So whatever the post, I try to save a post with their face on it because it makes it easier when you go in to know whose post it is. But yeah, that just helps me go through to their account and see if they've posted. And sometimes I go through and go, oh my God, I completely missed this. And it stops that moaning about the algorithm isn't showing me this, that, and the other. It's being intentional about what you want to see.
Yeah. I love it. I love that tip. Like I'm literally going to start today doing that and say hi to my new followers. I love it. I'm going to go back through now, look at my notification, go hi to everybody.
I'll
No,
send
I love that.
I'll send you the link to the blog as well if you want.
Yeah, we'll link it to the show notes as well. That'd be really cool. Really, really cool. So Becky, I ask everybody that comes on the podcast the same question. What do you know now that you wished you knew 10 years ago?
Right. So I think what I wish I knew, to be honest, I think it's a lot of what I've wrapped up in this. And I'm just going to go with two things if it's okay, but it will be short. The first thing is I wish that I knew that I didn't have to be utterly miserable before I made a change. Like just spotting those, being able to spot those red flags earlier. And the second thing is that I think I knew, but I probably didn't believe enough, is that other people's opinions about you is nothing to do with you. And
I
it's
love
about
that.
them and how they're feeling.
Yeah. I've got to say, Becky, that I hope I do your podcast this much justice because this has been one of the most epic conversations, but because of your vulnerability and showing you have got a warrior spirit in a huge massive skip full of warrior spirit, like, and it is coming off and I can feel the energy from you through the screen. Are you going to the mingle thing next week?
Oh no, do you know what? I'm absolutely gutted. I've got tickets, but I can't go.
Oh,
So it's that thing we were
I
talking
would have
about
given
earlier.
you a cuddle if I'd seen you in real life, but
I will
I'm
definitely get the next thing though, because I'm very
brilliant.
excited. Gutted I'm missing.
Excellent. But no, Becky, I just really, really want to thank you. I'm so grateful for everything you shared today. It's been absolutely gorgeous. So thank you very much.
Thank you
Now,
so
for
much for having me.
everybody listening, I've started using some new technology. So Becky, can I stop recording before I kick you out? Because otherwise I've got to do a fake. So we can do a fake goodbye, stop recording and then say goodbye.
Absolutely can.
So,
I'll still be
okay.
here when I stop.
Oh, Becky, what's your social media handle just before you go?
Oh yeah, that would be good. So my main place that I hang out is Instagram, and I'm at Be Heard Socials, BE Heard Socials, and I'm also over on LinkedIn and trying to hate it a little bit less. But yeah, Instagram is my main place.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Becky, for coming today. It's been amazing. Thank you.